Visual art classrooms are filled with students who have a range of different abilities, needs, and interests. It is challenging for visual art teachers to cater for all types of students in every lesson, which can lead to some students being excluded from the learning. I have chosen to focus on the quality teaching element, inclusivity, to develop my research inquiry question, which I have investigated during my 20-day placement. During my placement, I found that I could use 3 different types of scaffolds to support student inclusivity. The first was questioning scaffolds that can be used to help students understand and respond to new or difficult content. The second is literacy scaffolds that can be used to help students who have low literacy skills to understand the same content as their peers. The third one is thinking scaffolds to model practical art-making skills and problem solving to help different types of learners. An example of where I used questioning scaffolds to support student inclusivity was during a lesson based on the surrealist artwork of Salvador Dali. Surrealism is a challenging art movement for students to understand because its concepts are based on ideas of exploring the unconscious mind and other Freudian theories. Students had been exploring these ideas in previous lessons, and I decided to challenge them further by adding a virtual reality experience of one of Dali's paintings. This engaged and excited a lot of students, but they were struggling to respond to the artwork during the class discussion. I wanted students to write a paragraph to compare this virtual work to the original oil painting of Dali's, but most students would have struggled to complete this work on their own. To make sure that all students were included in the activity, I gave them a questioning scaffold that helped students to write a TEEK paragraph that responded to the question, does virtual reality technology improve the audience's experience of surreal artworks? This helps students to break down the activity into smaller, more achievable chunks and help to guide their responses using surrealist metalanguage. I was able to collect student work samples of this activity as I collected student surrealism workbooks for marking and feedback. This student work sample shows the high-quality paragraphs that students were able to produce because of the support provided from the questioning scaffold. An example of where I used literacy scaffolds to support student inclusivity was during the same surrealism lesson. I had a student who came to the art elective from the support unit who had a learning disability and low literacy skills. This student liked to be involved with the same activities as her peers, but needed extra support to be able to complete the learning activity. To help support her learning and inclusivity, I differentiated the questioning scaffold by turning the questions into a closed passage for her to complete. This literacy scaffold helped to support the students' inclusivity in the classroom and made them feel comfortable enough to have a go and not be afraid to make mistakes. The high level of inclusivity of the class was reflected in the quality teaching round coding sheet of the lesson. The 2 other members of the Professional Learning Committee both gave a 5 for the inclusivity element due to the differentiated literacy scaffold for the TEEK paragraph. An example of where I used thinking scaffolds to support student inclusivity was during a clay sculpting lesson for Year 7. Clay is a difficult material for Year 7s to learn how to use, as it is often the first real experience of 3-dimensional thinking and creating that they experience. Students had to create a clay tile that used symbols to express things about themselves. Most students chose different symbols to sculpt, but had a lot of difficulty making them. A lot of students were using tools to carve straight into their tile, which showed that they were still thinking in 2 dimensions. To get them thinking about sculpting instead of drawing, I made sure I had an image of my own example on the PowerPoint at all times, and did lots of mini demonstrations where I would scaffold my thinking. One example of this is the rose on my design. I explained that any student who wanted to learn how to make a rose should come up to the front where I sculpted another rose and thought about the steps out loud. I did this for many different symbols, and students' work definitely improved. The thinking scaffolds that I used catered for the different types of learners, as some students could figure it out for themselves, while others could see the process of thinking in 3 dimensions. This helped to support student inclusivity and got all students involved and engaged in the art-making process. Different types of scaffolds can be used to help support student inclusivity in the visual arts classroom. The visual arts classroom is filled with students with different backgrounds, abilities, interests, and learners who all have individual needs for teachers to cater for. Scaffolding is a great way to help make sure that all students feel included in the classroom and in their learning.